My name is Taharka Ade. I'm a professor in the Department of Africana Studies at San Diego State University.
Ade, we are talking Africa. That already sounds to me now as if I'm talking to a brother that we're coming from the same country.
Mm.
Ade, is that a Nigerian name or what?
That is it's a Yoruba.
Okay. I
Yeah.
cannot forget to recognize that is my brother's name. All right, Mr. Ade. Um, Tell me a little bit about your background. This is where we start from because this is a project that is a little bit particular because this is about African diaspora.
Mm.
And as African diaspora, we are very proud of our history, where we are coming from. We usually start from there, knowing who you are. So tell me a little bit about you, your childhood growing up.
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town known as Mount Vernon, Alabama. It's about 30 miles north of Mobile, Alabama, in the United States. And I tell people now, of course, I didn't realize it then, but it was definitely very much an African village. It was all Black town. We had very respected members of society, Black mayors and things of that nature. Very self-contained town, very proud people. My grandfather was a history teacher for 33 years, a high school history teacher. And so he was the first to teach me Afro-American history and African history, Africana history. So I learned a lot of things, a great deal under him. Did not think I wanted to go into history as a child. I think I was just overwhelmed with it. But as I got older, I started to see it as a responsibility and really a duty to ancestors.
Do you want to say anything as to what, because at the initial you didn't want to go into like be a teacher of history, be a lecturer of history. Today you are. Is there anything in the course of your growing up that sort of push you into doing that?
I guess there were a number of things. So I attended a historically Black high school. I attended a historically Black college, Alabama State University. And in those settings, I was blessed to have professors and teachers who cared a lot about me, wanted me to really understand historical significance of various things that have happened to people of African descent in this country. So I started off when I went to college in political science. I thought maybe I wanted to be an attorney. And I learned very quickly in political science what I really actually loved was history. And I think, just taking up the baton from my grandfather, really, but many of the professors who were there, they encouraged the push in that direction. And so I had a lot of community that understood my gift for history.
Mm-hmm. That's lovely. You see, you and I now, if you didn't say you're in the United States, it would appear as if we are just in the close neighbor. We are somewhere in Africa now because we are these are just two brothers talking, only that we are separated by a long distance and also a history that sometimes it is sad, but sometimes that is the way it is, no? But at the end of the day, we understand that, okay, these are brothers here. All right, now, help me understand it. A young boy growing up in the United States, how much access does he have to know about African history? I mean, about the root now.
Today, perhaps a lot of access. When I was growing up, however, the internet was just created around the time I was born. So it was in its infantile stage. So wasn't much you could learn on there. And today you still have to be very careful, right, about the internet. But so I think I was fortunate to have a grandfather who was a history teacher, and he had a huge collection of books and encyclopedias. And the first time I learned about my namesake, Taharka, it was the first king of African history that I learned about. And I learned from my grandfather. He pointed them out to me in an encyclopedia. And so I was able to learn African history that way, but a lot of people perhaps didn't have, well, I know didn't have the same amount of fortune. However, when I think about my high school, for example, since it was a historically Black high school and we had 90% Black teachers, they would try to impart at least a lot of African American history on people. But in terms of, African history itself, I seem to recall the library had murals of ancient Egyptian murals in it. There might have been some murals of Zulu culture, things of that nature, in the library. But there was different African things of African aesthetic that was painted or placed somewhere in a classroom or things of that nature. So we had kind of that surrounding, but it doesn't mean you have, really the ideological reinforcement to really understand the aesthetics that you're being surrounded with and what they mean to you. When I was in school, derogatory terms towards African people or people who looked maybe too dark was still popular. And so, it was, you had this very strange setting that we're all in this society that tries to create this notion of the inferiority of anything African: culture, language, aesthetic, the corporeal, the way people look. It's still to this day being pushed, but definitely when I was in school, it was a huge thing.
That is important. Now, you say your grandfather was a history teacher. Of course, that helps us understand now where you would have gotten most of the information from, at least from the family, because the thing is in the family now. So, what was your grandfather teaching? Was it of a specific topic in history, or was it a kind of a general African history?
No, he was a high school history teacher, so he had to teach what was kind of mandated by the school system. But from what I recall him saying, he passed back in 2012, so he's no longer with us. But from what I recall him saying, he would make sure to slip in as much African American and African history as he could into the curriculum, and his students to this day tell me they loved him for it. So.
Thank you so much for that. And now, this is the last question I'm asking you in the early age before we move to what you are doing today. Now, when you were still growing up now as a young man, you had a conversation. You listened to what your father told you. Of course, you were highly blessed, to have a grandfather who understands history, because that is where most of the manipulation actually is done. No, they try to take you away from your roots, so you are on the surface now. So the wind can blow you to any level. But if you have a father now who tell you this is your root, it makes sure that you are planted on the ground, so the wind doesn't make you fall. Now, when you go around and have a conversation with regular other guys in town, how does that affect you? What difference does it make in the kind of conversation that you make with people?
So when I was a good deal younger, I was still am very passionate, but passionate in a way that I didn't know how to really bring up conversations without being kind of overly forceful about it, in terms, conversations in terms of, African history or racism or anything like that. So I would just talk about things in sometimes in the wrong atmosphere, in the wrong time. And sometimes, very few times, that was taken as refreshing. And other times, or most times, it was kind of like, hey, we're relaxing over here, don't bring that around right now. But as I got older and as they've gotten older, people who I was close with and people who I really drifted away from, even some of them have come back and say, hey, you used to talk about many of these things when we were younger. Can you bring them up again? What did you mean when you said this or that?